This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, and today I'm going to talk about patterns, paradigms, context, interest, and complex system analysis. It seems that, the Third World War seems to be a possibility, and for some, we are already there, or it's looming. Um, the recent attack by Israel on Iran is everywhere. For many, they didn't expect such a strong and destructive response by the Iranian authorities. The war, then we talk about people. It's always about people. What's going Trump to do? What's going this and that? And okay, if we discuss people, and people is important because it's people that makes decisions, but decisions are rarely made alone, and because presidents do not have the power that sometimes presidents or prime ministers do not have the power that we many times believe they have, because they depend on information that is provided. They have to analyze, they make their assessments based on information, on intelligence that is given to them by the people that are supposed to provide them, lots of different people that are supposed to provide them that information to allow him to make decisions. So this is never about a single person. Rarely it's about a single person. Of course, there are situations and circumstances and occasions where the decision of a single person can make the difference. I know that, I'm aware of that, so I do not dismiss it. But for the purpose of a systemic complex system analysis, and our societies and civilizations, where the world where we live is a complex system, and it requires a complex system analysis with historical context, and that needs to go beyond the focus on who has more missiles, what are the best missiles, why they do, all that where most of us sometimes waste, not because we do not need to be. There are valuable information that we need to know if we feel that is important to be aware of what's going on, which is important, is relevant, because we don't live in an empty world anymore. There has never been. By the way, the concept of an empty world, it was used by the the concept of terra nullius. It was very convenient for colonizers and imperialists. But because the world has never been an empty place, wherever you go, even if the most remote places, there is always life there. And there are rivers, there is snow, even there is only snow or ice, is something there. It's you have the ocean, and the ocean is full of life. I mean, no, that's just an absurd concept, but for the convenience of imperialist minds and colonialist minds, you can always find or frame. There's always the possibility of frame reality in ways that enhance the interests of certain groups. So we need to recognize, to learn, not because we are inherently able to spot them, okay, but we need to learn to do it in a holistic way, which means that we need to connect the dots and to recognize the patterns, to understand the paradigms, to know about the context, the present context and the historical context, and the interests behind. What are the interests behind what's going on? And to analyze it as a complex system analysis, and the ability to understand that there is ideology, but there is also the interest. We can, what I want to say is the interests are never. The idea. What I want to say is exactly is this: the ideology alone doesn't explain it. Never explains a situation of the real life. Okay, the real life, there is always interests. There are always interests, people, groups, people, families. It's not about the country, because we usually buy into that delusion or illusion that it is the country interests. No, it is always about groups in that country that are shaping the policies in order to meet their goals, their objectives. The ones that want the good for the country, usually they exist, okay, but they usually are despised and hated by the elites, which means the ones that want to have a more just and equal society and want to have a world where peace and cooperation and law, international law, prevails, they are hated by the elites, by the plutocrats and the oligarchs, which is the class that always influence in the current paradigm of societal and civilizational paradigm, are the ones that really pull the strings. They are the ones behind the wars. That's why it's not an exaggeration to say that every war is a bankster war. I use the word bankster because they are banksters. Banking is one thing, but we are really, our lives are controlled, managed. The power is in the hands of banksters. So, doesn't most people understand this? We do. That is true. That we understand this reality. I mean, but does it make a difference? No, because we do not give it the relevance that it deserves. And why? Because we are always not lost, but engaged in the ideological battles, the emotional, the emotional attachment. Let's put it this way, and we miss. So that we start to discuss details. Are not details important? Of course they are. But details only are important, or fragments, or specific situations are important. If an hospital is bombed and destroyed with no other purpose but to kill people, it is an important fact. It is extraordinarily important. But that alone does not explain the big picture. And we need the big picture. And if we really want to, if you really want and want to work, and want to work on ourselves, to create a different order, a different international order, a different paradigm, we need a different approach. We need to frame our analysis in ways that change the lens. We need to develop the lenses that allow us to be less affected by a war, by an omnipresent war, which is the war to conquer, to colonize our minds and hearts. That is a war that's going on all the time. That's a kind of proxy war where the powers that be try to... It's a proxy war, you know. That is a proxy war against us. A war that erodes our will to fight back. It's a war for submission. It's a war to prepare us for voluntary submission. It's a war against the truth. It's a war against our human condition, because it's a war that wants to transform us into subjects, into useful idiots. So I do not say that we do not need to take sides And usually when we take sides, we are involved ideologically and emotionally. That is for sure. But we need to have always a skeptic eye, you know, to look for the patterns, to identify the patterns that, I mean, does it smell, if it smells like fish, or it probably it's a fish, you know, there is a fish there or something like it, which means that we should never believe, be dogmatic. I mean, we should never be we always need to be skeptic. That's my point. And open our eyes to always the big picture. And the big picture requires that we always have to be critical of our own beliefs, of our own, to understand our prejudices and biases, which this is a process. This requires our will, and again, that's why this is something that it seems obvious. People understand it, but most of us do not realize that we just do not practice it, and we do not practice it because the reality where we live does not promote it. It promotes the opposite. It tries. That's why our attention span is so short. That's why our need to understand reality in a deep way and in a holistic way is almost non-existent. Why? It's not because we cannot do it. Even the ones that are less inclined to be for intellectual for more intellectual ways of understanding reality, there is always a way to understand it. But the problem is that we live life is always about processes. So it's not about anything static. It's about processes, and that processes involve patterns and paradigms and contexts and interests that obviously affect the way we behave, the way we reason, the way we adapt to reality, and the way we understand ourselves and reality, and our relations as well with everything, with people and whatever it is. So the process by which the process shapes who we are and how we behave, then reinforces the processes themselves. That's why we just are kept in this kind of cage or this spinning wheel that that is not easy, that in spite of us being able to understand the principles of how the system works, it doesn't mean that we stop following the rules dictated by that same system. And especially in what comes to understanding patterns and paradigms and context and interest, instead of always looking, analyzing events and people, you know. It's always about events and people, you know. But events, even they are factual, and people matter. That's not enough to understand the issues, to understand the broader reality, which is always, to understand the root causes that are always present in every, you know, even if you, for example, if there is an accident, a traffic accident, you know, you have a crash, and that is the crash itself. You can look at it and you can explain it in detail, you know, but it doesn't give you it doesn't explain the crash itself, because the people, were they driving too fast? It was just a distraction. But then, if that's the case, it was just a random, or was it part of a behavior that was already a repetitive behavior, a steady behavior, kind of. And then you start to understand that crash had root causes, which means that, for example, one of the drivers was always driving in overspeeding. It was always overspeeding and not respecting the traffic signs and whatever it is. So there is a pattern that can explain why the possibility of that crash occur was already in the pattern. It was just the necessary the circumstances that would be the right circumstances or wrong circumstances to occur in order to the crash was a real possibility, not just a random possibility. And that is the same about the wars, about economic crisis, even about many natural events, you know, like many catastrophes that happen, like earthquakes or other, that in our age we can more or less, to a certain extent, to predict them. So we can prevent them, even that we do not know exactly when they are going to strike us, but nevertheless we can use the precautionary principle to design policies that allow us to be more prepared or ready to deal with the problem. But when the problem itself is about interests, is about imperialism, it's about neocolonialism, it's about power dynamic and class warfare, we should never forget it. We need to identify the patterns, and besides the discussions, the conversations, the speeches, the thousands and thousands of interviews and opinions about, in this case, I'm more focused in the wars. I'm more, but it's not. It's just the because it's our reality these days. We need to understand the patterns. I mean, we need to understand what are the paradigms, what are the who, in whose interest, cui bono. Because if we do not train ourselves to have to learn to become a complex system, or to have a complex system analysis, we might probably be always in the, I mean, we might be always in the you know, not I mean, depending on other people's views to understand the reality. Those who know me understand that, or have heard me saying that we all are bits and pieces of other people's knowledge and experience. And of course, I totally believe it. So therefore, I know the relevance of other people knowledge, experience, and information, how important it is for our own for the building of our own understanding of reality. But the purpose of it should be for truth and justice, which means that we are not supposed to take anybody knowledge and experience as the truth, because the truth, the factual truth, has to be subordinated to justice, and justice it requires our training, to train ourselves in what are the values and principles that are really important, that need to be present in a system, in a societal system, and in a civilization, in order to make it fair, just, and that we can build relations based on trust, and we can cooperate, and we can build an international system based on cooperation, because in the age of this technological age, with 8 or 9 billion people living in this planet, we need that cooperation. We cannot exhaust the resources just in destructive ways, that besides our conspicuous consumerism, we are building up a militarizing the world, using resources that are just for destruction, and then we are just in building more overshoot and ecological destruction and species extinction, which is exactly the opposite we need. So therefore, this is all these traits, pieces, need to be put together in order to make up the puzzle that is important to understand the reality of the world, but the roots, the causes of the problems, and how can we, each one of us, but in an organized and unified way, think about a system, an economy, and a society and a civilization that is really humanized. Not because we should not confuse technoscientism or technological development and scientific knowledge with human development. Does it, to some extent, helps human development? Of course. And why? Because science can help us understand laws and principles and rules that give us a more factual perspective of the basis for understanding ourselves in a much better comprehensive way. That is absolutely true. But technology makes us more dependent on convenience and commodification, because it's based on a capitalist system where commodification and profit maximization is the rule of the game for private accumulation of wealth, and the problem is the power that we need to deal with that. We need to understand that doesn't make a society or a civilization more humanized. That's exactly, in my opinion, that we are on the verge of transforming the imperialist civilization, which is the one that is responsible, the paradigm, the imperialist civilizational paradigm where we live for already almost around 10,000 years. That instead that we start to dismantle it and to build an ecological civilization that is more that is much more that would help us to humanize us, okay? So use the technology and science for the real humanization of the humanity, not the machination, because we are trying for the purpose of profiting to humanize, to transform human beings into machines, or to transhumanize, and to change everything in nature, because we have this belief that we are entitled to control people, to control nature, to control territories, to control the people that are inferior to us. That's another layer of this problem, which is related with justice. Because let me remind you again how I see things. I see things, all things are relational. When I talk about truth and justice, I'm talking about it as a relational reality. It's related to something. It's not an abstract concept. Okay, it is a concept, it is an idea, but it is a relational idea. It's not some floating somewhere in the ether, okay? So this is why I mean it's you know, for example, if you look into the 20th century, from the late the 19th century till now, of the history socialism or socialist thought and socialist, all the. It's always. I mean, it's always about people. You have Marxists, Leninists. We have Trotskyites. We have Maoists. We have this. We have that. I mean, we have again. It's not about denying. That's why this principle of focusing in individuals this is not a battle between individualism and collectivism. This is a battle for truth and justice. It's not a battle that we are supposed to understand reality in I know, let me explain it. I know that we are still tribal, which means that we need to belong to a group, and the society, and the complex society is there is too big that we have this national identity, which is we understand it and we know that we have that national identity, but besides that we belong to groups, okay, and that's nothing wrong with that, as long as we understand that we all have the same needs, and we need a system that serves us all. That's the main, which means that we, to certain, we have, well, let's think about football, for example, or other sports. That individual sports or collective sports or team sports. We have the Club A and the Club B and the Club C and whatever. We have local clubs, regional clubs, national clubs, blah, blah, blah. Okay. If we do not understand that we cannot confuse or make it more important or invest, are emotionally and ideologically invested, okay, in a specific club that sometimes we don't even understand how it came to, how it happened, maybe we know because it was our father, okay, it doesn't matter, but you might even know there are some influences that sometimes we don't understand how it happened. Just you can say that it was their preferences or this or that. It doesn't matter. It just matters that you cannot think or believe that the reality is the reality of your club, because it's not. And that's how we need to understand it. That's how we need to have a culture that makes us relativize. There are certain things that need to be relative. They need to be. We cannot allow ourselves to fight tooth and nail for goals and objectives that actually have nothing to do with our interests, which is the case of a football club, for example. Who is the people that are making the money? The money they make comes from us, okay? From the advertisement and from the money that we pay for our club fee, or our the ticket we buy to assist the game. So, and that's why we need to understand that there are we can it's not that difficult I mean, it is difficult, but the thing is that we are instrumentalized and indoctrinated into this ideology of individualistic ideologies that are not for our interests. They are exactly the opposite, you know, because for us, this is true for wars, where they want to manipulate us in order. This is the perception manipulation to manufacture consent in order to make us, to divide us, and to make us feeling that there is nothing we can do to change this reality. So that means that we are always under the pressure, the propaganda of learned helplessness. This is a social engineering and behavior engineering. Okay, so so that's why this is complex. This is not a single. This is not about propaganda. Propaganda is not. We cannot understand propaganda in a simplistic way. That's what I'm trying to say. Because propaganda is several layers of propaganda with different objectives. But that we should be aware. We should always be aware that we are under a barrage of weapons of mass deception, omnipresent, and it is ubiquitous, and it is permanent. It doesn't matter, and we need to learn how to live with it and to be able to understand it and to build an alternative. That's why our conscious mind is very important. It's not about self-development. It's about self. It's about the awareness that by ourselves, being aware of the reality that is built not by us but by others in order to transform us, in order to make us obedient slaves. Because in the end, it doesn't matter if you team with Club A or Club B, okay? Because in the end, they are profiting out of your emotional and ideological investment. You invest. You are living because they make you feel strong emotions. They make you feel a cultural identification, a tribal identification, but for the wrong purposes. They do not make it. They make it in order that you feel part of something bigger than you. It's like the religion. But they don't do it in order to free you, in order to make us more free, have more economic, in order to have more economic freedom or political or cultural and social freedom and agency, but in order to manipulate us without allowing us, because then we are invested in a reality that in order to understand us and as participatory beings, as participatory citizens, we are just consumers and spectators that every day need to go out to perform tasks, in many cases stupid tasks, that are not even, that has not even any produce any good for the society. Sometimes it's the opposite, but nevertheless we need to do it just in order to survive, to get by. And then we need, in order to feel that we belong to something, that we are alive, okay, then we have this we have politics and philosophy, this clubistic philosophy for that's for our entertainment, as if it's the way to give meaning and purpose to our lives. So this is just a little explanation on the layers of social engineering and ideological engineering for the purpose of voluntary servitude, submission, and most of the media, even the media that we call alternative media, is just the same. I mean, I also consume alternative media, okay? But the thing is, I try to keep a skeptic eye. You know, it's not just taking everything for its face value. Because these people, many people, and they seem honest, and they try, they are biased, they have their ideological bias in that. We all have it, okay? But they try, many of them, some of that I listen frequently, or I watch frequently, I think they try to be intellectually honest. Yes. Otherwise I would not watch them, that's for sure. But I always know that some of them, that's their source of income. So they need to keep it going. You know, they need to have this constant flow, which means, because of the system we have, we all need to produce something in order to have an income. Which means that it's not about truth and justice, but it's about a need, because we need it, because we need we need to keep because that's this consumerist society, where you need to produce this steady flow of information. Therefore, truth and justice always becomes a junior partner, always becomes a subsidiary of the need to keep the flow of information going. And it should not be like that. I mean, what should be always more important is that we, all of us, engage in doing our best to provide to others the clean and comprehensive knowledge, and by clean I mean as less biased as possible, and let others think by themselves, because that's how I see it. And it's not about people. That's where we are always focusing people. It's about ideas. Yeah, it's about, because people come and go. Ideas can stay. And there are good ideas and bad ideas, but all ideas have consequences. And then that's why we need to understand patterns, paradigms, historical contexts, interests, power games. In the case of, because we need to understand that our societies, capitalist societies, and imperialistic civilization are the root causes. But if we don't understand the interests behind it, we might believe this is about. No, it's not. There is ideology, of course. There is culture, of course. But we cannot understand anything without going through class warfare, individual and corporate interests, which means group interests. So, to identify the patterns and understand the paradigms in order to be able, so we need to understand the reality where we live in order to be able to discuss and to design a new paradigm, a new culture, a new civilization, a different way, a different political economy. And if we do not do it, we will always be in the living under the thinner dictatorship, which means there is no alternative. Which means that we have been indoctrinated and instrumentalized to live under learned helplessness, not innate helplessness, learned helplessness. Because we cannot cope with a certain uncertainty as a way of life, kind of. And that's what our systems want us to be, to feel just helpless, to be ready to be used and dumped, and entertained with stuff that has nothing to do with our interests, our collective well-being, because it's only about manipulation, while others are profiting, while a few are becoming wealthier and wealthier and controlling everything. And even making us believe that they are our friends. They are somehow heroes or saviors or masters of the universe or conquerors of the universe, or whatever it is. I mean, it is just not the way to live, not the way to be, not the way to give meaning and purpose to our lives. Because by being spectators, and thinking that we just need to belong to a club, it's not enough. It's not enough. We cannot give up our agency, and our just agency is a process. It's not a condition. It's not a function. It's a process that requires our energy, our focus, because it's about building a being. It's about building yourself. It's not about discovering yourself. We are not here to discover ourselves. While we build ourselves, we discover. Why? Because while we build ourselves, we look for the intellectual tools, and we develop the cognitive abilities and understand our emotions and how our emotions and feelings work, and then we understand ourselves. Because we understand that since a young age we are being indoctrinated and instrumentalized, and we cannot just undo it. We can learn to understand it and to be conscious that we need to build our identity in a conscious way. Otherwise, we are nothing else but the result of a continuous process of manipulation from all sides, from all sides. It doesn't matter how smart we believe we are. It's just it just doesn't matter. So I'm going to end it here. This is also a process. I do not pretend to know the truth. It's a process again. So what I think that we really need is to do some conscious work, some conscious critical analysis in order to understand how complex systems work, the many layers, and it needs to be a conscious work. Because if we leave it to others to tell us how to understand reality, how to understand the events that are going on in the world, we are just followers, and we need to be more than that. That's for sure. Okay. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.